Hi guys, I'm gonna try to make this video about the new gun laws Parliament has decided on in one take. Let's see if I manage to do this. First of all, snooze. So, Swedish gun law news, right. It's a bit too much to just mention in the beer stream, so I'll do a video about it. Right, so before we say anything about this, you guys need to know how this is supposed to work. So, Parliament says, or in Swedish it's tillkännager, but Parliament basically votes on a motion for some law change. So law change X, let's say. So a majority of Parliament votes for this, it passes. And what it means is they basically tell the government to start the process of enacting this law. Okay, so the process is supposed to continue after that. Government starts an investigation. Investigation gets a few pointers. This and that is to be investigated. They appoint a person or persons, usually several people, to do this investigation. Usually takes a year. After a year, approximately, it can go faster, but usually not. After a year, the investigation is finished, and then it goes on something, in Swedish at least, it's called remissrunda. And I don't know the English word for that, so I'll tell it for what it is. It is every interested stakeholder. It can be government agencies, civil NGOs, it can be companies, it can be a little bit of whatever, depending on what it's about, gets to have their say. And I've responded to these things as well. The new investigation of X, Y, and Z is done, and I tell them why this and that is bad and why this and that is good. Anyone can do this, but I write as the chairman of my shooting club, so it gets a little bit more impact. So if you Google my shooting club on the Parliament's webpage, you might see something I've written. Anyway, after that, the government should take notice of all the suggestions from the stakeholders, and will make a lagrådsremiss, or a suggestion for a law that's sent to Lagrådet, which is a bunch of high judges basically looking it over and see if this is actually applicable according to constitution, other laws, etc., if there's any issues with this. And then they write their suggestions, and after that it becomes a proposition from the government back to Parliament to vote for a specific suggestion of a law, and Parliament then votes on this suggestion for a law, and every 1st of July and 1st of January laws gets enacted into Swedish official law. So that is the way it's supposed to work. So how does it work in reality? Nothing of this actually happens in reality. First of all, government doesn't give a shit about what Parliament actually decides on, this current government at least. So since, 2014 or whatever, the government doesn't give a shit about what Parliament says. And when they actually do enact an investigation, they just ask them to provide the... They ask the questions they want an answer to and not the ones they don't want an answer to. So they basically focus the investigation in the way they want the result to be. So they basically order a result from the investigation. And the person or persons doing the investigation are all basically party loyalists, friends, politrux, political commissars, whatever you want to call them. It's not going to be a fair investigation. And when all the stakeholders respond, they don't give a shit. And when Lagrådet, the judges, respond on this so there's a good example of this. They don't give a shit about anything of that. So we have something called gymnasielagen, or the high school law. A bullshit law, I'm not going to go into that, it's not related to guns, so it's a horrible law. So let's see if I can translate what the judges in Lagrådet said. The limit has been reached for what is acceptable in how a law can be formulated. So in Swedish that would be: gränsen här har nåtts för vad som är acceptabelt i fråga om hur lagstiftning kan utformas. And this is the most dry government officials in governmentalese language. This is the hardest put down in Swedish government history of someone, because they usually formulate everything really careful and weigh every word on a little silver scale, and they're just basically going all in, telling them that they're retarded this way. we still got the law. It still sucked. It was an illegal law. It broke against the constitution, a bunch of international agreements and what have you. So as you can imagine, this system does not work. So let's have a look at what they actually decided this time. Please observe, this is what Parliament has decided in the absolute first step of this process. So first of all, the suggestion came, 38 motions. This was handled by the Justice Committee, and the Justice Committee is formed of all political parties equal to the last election. So what they decide is basically what is going to happen. And then there was a debate. So I searched for terror, or T-E-R-R. So the socialist here, Peter Löfberg, from the Social Democrats, basically just referenced a bunch of terrorist bullshit and told them that, terrorism is bad. Sten Bergheden from the Moderate Party is one of the really good guys when it comes to gun laws in Sweden, among other things. And he's basically smack-talking the Social Democrat right back about talking about terrorism when these laws have nothing to do with terrorism. So that is the scale of it. Tobias Andersson, the one in the Swedish Democrats who handles these kind of questions, is also really, really good, on par with Sten Bergheden in these questions. And he's also smack-talking them about the terrorism bullshit that the Social Democrats talk about. And this is the way it goes. So we have more terrorism bullshits. And it's regarding the firearms directive and shit like that. So let's have a look at the actual suggestions, at least a few of them. So here's the firearms directive, and it's basically, so it doesn't really say here what they're talking about, but I know what they're talking about, so I'm gonna give you a synopsis of it. Basically, Sweden hasn't implemented the European Union firearms directive because the government has always tried to implement it far more than what is actually necessary. So these two motions is about just implementing it on the minimum level. We have to do like a few tweaks of the law because we already have a restrictive gun law in Sweden. But they have used the socialists have used the European Firearms Directive to try to ban shit like all the magazines and everything that they think is naughty, to disarm the populace. And this is not what the majority of the parliament wants. So here we can see reservations from the Social Democrats, the Center Party, the Communist Party, and the Environmental Party. But they want the Parliament to vote for these motions so we can implement it on a tiny level. This has already been decided by Parliament, of course, but the government's shit doesn't give a shit. So I don't know how many times this has already been voted through in Parliament. This is just a general oversight of the gun law legislation. It's a bunch of motions. We'll come back to these separate points later. And same political parties have reservations. A new government agency for handling gun licensing. So this was actually decided back in 2015. So the current government hasn't done shit about this since 2015. And it's mainly because the Swedish police does everything it can to make sure you can't get a firearms license that isn't like a wooden stocked bolt action rifle with an internal magazine, and I don't know. So the socialist, the communist, and environmentalist was against that as well. So how gun licensing is handled. So the new government agency should have it, and it should be done in as fast as possible. I think my record is 7 years handling time, but that was a bunch of court cases in between as well. But yeah, half a year isn't that uncommon. It's a bit faster at the moment, but that is because the Justice Ombudsman has given them a shitload of criticism. So they actually started handling firearms licensing fast. Fast in this case is a couple of weeks, at least in Stockholm. Same assholes against this for some stupid reason. Why would you be against this? Actually following, there is a law regulating this that says that förvaltningslagen is the name of it. That says that it should be handled skyndsamt, or as fast as possible, basically. And they're not doing that, obviously, since they could speed up the process immediately when ordered to by the Justice Ombudsman. And this is interesting. We have limited licensing in time for 5 years for full auto machine guns and handguns, or enhandsvapen. Or the law says firearm held with one hand. And that is pistols or revolvers or shit like that. So that is not needed. When that law came in the early 2000s, it was because at that time we didn't really have control over who owned the firearms, not as we do today. So they wanted a 5-year window for these extra dangerous firearms to check that they are not criminals and shit. This is done every single day now. So we have the run against the criminal registry and also any registry for suspicions of criminal activity. Every day I am and everyone else who owns a firearm in Sweden is run against these police registries. So this law is totally unnecessary and can be removed. It's ridiculous. It feels like my handguns, I have them on loan from the state. It's bullshit. And the really sad part about this renewal of licensing is, so your cutoff date, say it's 1st of May. If you hand it in like 29 days before the license passes, and the handling time of the police is 29 plus 1 day, then you are guilty of a gun crime, same as any gangster in the hoods, because the law doesn't differentiate. You handed it in time, because if you the law says if you hand a renewal application in 30 plus days before it runs out, then you're clear. You can keep the firearm. They had to change that law because the police had such a horrible handling time just because of this. But if you're 1 day late, then you're guilty of a gun crime when the police takes too long. So not because of something you did. You handled it. Technically, you handed in the application for renewal in time before the license ran out. But if you're like 29 or fewer days before that date, and the police takes longer to handle the license, congratulations, go straight to jail. And because you're a tax-paying Swede, they will prosecute you to the full extent of the law. So this is bullshit, and I know a lot of people who's had their lives destroyed by this bullshit. And this is a word called synnerliga skäl. It's basically totally forbidden in Swedish legalese. And for some reason, full auto machine guns and handguns have this in front of them in the law. But it isn't totally forbidden. So you can get license for these things. But the police use this wording in the law that's been there since 1930s to deny licensing or raise the bar for entry to own these things all the time. So this needs to go. And that will happen if they get what they want. And licensing when you change a firearm. So if you have like a regular bolt-action rifle for hunting moose or whatever, and you want to switch it to an equivalent of another brand or whatever, same caliber, same purpose, then you shouldn't have to go through a lengthy application process for a new firearms license. So as it is right now, you have to sell the one you have and then hope that you get a license for the next one. And then you have to wait, God knows how long, to get it. So you should be able to just go to the store, switch out the rifle, and they can handle the paperwork with the police. Give them some money, have a good day. That is logical, but Social Democrats, the communists, and the environmentalists are against that for some stupid reason. Still, the majority voted through it. So demands to have a gun license. The title doesn't really say what it's about, but it's about. So for example, say you want the new Tikka Tac A1, the Tikka with the folding stock and the ergonomics and all that. You can't get it on a firearms license now because it looks too dangerous. It looks tactical, right? So if you get the Tikka Tac whatever that has a regular stock, like a the varmint rifle, you can buy that. You get the license for it. It's the same firearm, but since it doesn't look naughty, you can buy that, throw away the shitty stock, and buy like an MDT chassis system for it or whatever, and that's fine. That is totally doable and legal and all that good stuff. It's ridiculous. So this motion or these motions wants to make sure the police doesn't do that shit. So they only look at the vital parts of the gun that they are performing to the specifications that they're going to be used for. Like if you're going to hunt moose, you're going to have a certain joule of energy at 100 meters. If this caliber and rifle can perform that, then it's okay for those kinds of hunts. That is the only thing they really need to know. And yeah, that is what this is about. And that went through. And this is basically just being able to own more guns. Same people against that, of course. European firearms passport. We can get a European firearms passport in Sweden, but other Europeans cannot travel to Sweden with a firearm using a European firearms passport, which is total bullshit. It's really difficult to have international competitions in Sweden because of this. Same with hunters from another European Union country coming to Sweden. So this is just bad. This is just bad. It's bullshit that we don't have this. This is total bullshit, but of course, and even the liberals were against that. I don't know why. Fuck you, liberals. And yeah, buying guns. So tillsyn av skjutbanor, that means who handles basically certifying shooting ranges to be okay, basically. So the police does this now, and they just make up their own physics, actually, their own laws of nature to explain how it's super dangerous to shoot any kind of gun anywhere, and then use that bullshit logic to ban shooting ranges. And they have to buy like extremely expensive bullshit equipment all around that doesn't really do anything because the police doesn't know what they're doing. They're just throwing shit at a wall to see what sticks. And this has to be done by someone else than the police. It's just stupid. And this didn't go through. This didn't go through. Neither did this. But this did go through. So it's basically the rules regarding gun collecting, and there isn't really any rules regarding gun collecting. We can collect whatever we want. Do you want to have anti-aircraft machine guns or something? Yeah, technically you can. In practice, police won't let you collect anything that isn't like a bolt-action rifle or something from the First World War. But this is so that there's rules that you can follow that are logical and self-explanatory. So just to make sure the police cannot just deny you. They're going to have to point at a rule. This rule is not followed or whatever. So basically make it so that there are rules. This wasn't an issue before because the police wasn't assholes before like 2010 or something like that. But now they are assholes. So most of these laws are required because the police try to deny legal gun ownership. So yeah, but the main problem with all of this is that these guys, the Social Democrats in the government now, doesn't give two shits about Sweden's representative democracy. So nothing of this will happen or come to pass if we do not change the government in September in Sweden. So yeah, do not, if you care in any way, shape or form about democracy, about anything regarding Sweden, do not vote for these people. And you can see who denied all of this mostly is the Social Democrats, the Communists, and the Environmentalists. Do not vote for any of those political parties, and yeah. And you can see who actually suggested these motions as well. It is the Moderate Party, the Christian Democrats, the Swedish Democrats, the Moderates, the Christian Democrats, and the Liberals in some cases, even though they went against some other motions. They're more good than bad, but they're just gonna go disappear after this election. They're so tiny, so I wouldn't waste my vote on the Liberals. But anyway, it's mainly the Swedish Democrats and the Moderate Party that's way ahead in when it comes to gun laws being good. Okay, this video is turning out to be a bit long, so I'm gonna end it here, but I hope you learned something. Yeah. So too long didn't watch is nothing's gonna change unless you change the government, and that's up to you. Okay.